Africa Prime, brought to you by Jamison's Select Reserve.
Welcome back. You are watching Africa Prime, and tonight we are talking to the CEO of the Public Investment Corporation, Elias Masilela. He is a man of many talents. He's a man who manages over R1 trillion in assets for the South African public, particularly the government sector. He has been called various names. He's been called an editor, he's been called an academic, an economist, a strategist, policy formulator, negotiator, business leader, and author, and he may well become a filmmaker, who knows. But we'll get more details into this conversation as we go along. We're talking to him tonight about how he invests that vast amount of money. Elias, one of the questions that I had earlier was how you break it down to invest R1 trillion. But one of your strategies is actually to dish out that money to the private sector. How do you decide who gets what percentage, and where do you also then tell them where they invest that money?
It's a combination of factors. Firstly, the mandate stipulates how much we can dish out and how much we can invest within the PIC. Secondly, when we make the decision, we are driven by performance, or let me say the record of the asset managers that we're looking at, and also the styles that they bring to what we want to achieve. Clearly, what we do is we run what we call a core satellite approach, where the core are the funds that are managed from within, and that's about 75% of the listed funds. And what we do with those funds is basically track and index. Right. And what we then give out to asset managers is for them to perform above the index, which is what is called alpha.
That's the 25% of the listed space.
That's right. And put those together, they should give us an output or an outcome that is above market performance.
How often do you review those mandates?
It happens on a periodic basis, average three years on average. And what we also do is we demarcate the asset managers from what we call emerging managers on the one side and established or large managers on the other. Where the developed managers, we identify up and coming managers whom we can assist to grow or develop to become competitors in the industry and compete with the larger ones and the best in the market.
Yeah. When is the next review?
The next review should be in about a year's time.
You raise an issue around trying to grow young fund managers who are out there who want to make a name for themselves. But one of your bigger mandates is also, or has been in the past, the issue of transformation. Getting companies to increase the number of black managers that they have on their boards and increasing black representation, etc., etc. How far have you gone in realizing that mandate?
We've gone quite some way down in that process, and over and above just engaging with the investee companies, we've developed a scientific tool which is going to enable us to deal with them in an objective fashion. Sure. We have what we call a sustainability matrix, which we apply on all the investee companies. And the matrix then generates results for us which give us an indication of whether a company is performing or not. And what we've done as a result, we've applied this for the first time towards the end of last year and early this year. And what we have done is we've taken the bottom 20% of the investee companies, and we're going to use those as our agenda for engaging with them for the next 3 years. Because of the number of companies that we invest in, we're unlikely to deal with all of them in any 1 year. Sure. Therefore, we're going to have a 3-year rolling cycle. But what we found in this exercise is that there are 3 or 4 areas of sustainability or of empowerment, if you want, which are consistently a problem across companies, large or small, listed and unlisted. One of them is employment equity. The other is representativity on the boards. Third is procurement. And if you look at all these 3, they are very critical to change the way in which South Africa operates and the way in which participation takes place in the real economy of South Africa.
I'd argue that you left out the 4th one at the CEO level.
Which one is that?
In terms of CEOs who are black who are running companies on the JSE?
They are covered in employment equity, and they are also covered in terms of board representativity, right? But the one that I deliberately left out is one that encompasses all these three and is very critical. Depending on how we decide on people to be decision makers in large enterprises, or the way in which we decide on individuals that are going to go and set up sustainable and dynamic new businesses, the level of skill is very important. And that becomes my fourth variable in looking at how the companies that we invest in are influencing the changes in those variables. What has happened, unfortunately, is that over the past few years, since empowerment has been a point of consideration in South Africa, unfortunately, the financial media, like yourselves, has overplayed the concept of ownership or shareholding to the detriment of the other pillars of empowerment. And in my view, ownership cannot be considered in isolation of the other pillars.
Right. Now, in terms of the findings that you got when you did your metrics, how far, where do we stand?
We have quite a number of companies that are good performers. I would say about 30 to 40% of the companies are good performers.
So 60% still need to catch up.
60% still needs to catch up. And what we have done is we have gone to a level or to a stage of setting targets for ourselves to say, in this portfolio of companies that we invest in, over a number of years, these are the thresholds that we should have realized. And we use those thresholds that we've set for ourselves to impose on the companies that we operate or we invest in.
You strike me very much as taking a non-confrontational approach, choosing the scientific route instead of going to the AGM and saying, hello, I raised this issue last year that you need to have more black members on your board. And here I am, back a year later, nothing has changed. Is that the best approach in this environment?
It's a combination of the two. What we have decided consciously is that we will pursue what we call the moral suasive approach, engaging with these enterprises behind closed doors, understanding what we want to get out of them, and understanding our long-term outlook. We have recently changed our outlook from 3 years to 10 years. So that is the outlook that we would like to give enterprises so that they can have a long-term view on the South African economy and also on their operations. But if, as we engage behind closed doors and we don't get the traction that we want, we then go to these AGMs and voice our views and vote accordingly.
There's a story for me then when you do that. You raise another important point here. When you play this, I don't want to call it activist role because it's not quite there. You are working within the system. But at the same time, when you raise these issues, when you put in these benchmarks, at the same time, effectively to a degree, you are very close to interfering in the running of the company, which is dangerous in itself because this is your vehicle to generate growth. But at the same time, you do need to see the issues that are important to you being implemented. How do you find that balance? What have you found so far?
May I change the term from interfering to intervening?
Okay.
In the sense that the way we engage is to aid the success of the company. We have no reason to compromise its success because it impacts on our performance directly. Now, this has been informed by research that has been undertaken in a number of parts of the world and over time. The most recent research that has been undertaken is the research amongst OECD countries, which clearly shows that there is a positive correlation between sustainability and financial performance. Right. It has been found that companies that are concerned and internalize sustainability issues tend to perform better than those that do not. And therefore, our intervening in our engagement with investee companies is to conscientize them and to make sure that the issues of sustainability get elevated to the heart of the decision making rather than them staying as peripheral to the undertaking of business.
You are quoted in one of the newspapers as saying you don't really engage in politics, but you're a child of politics. And you actually have written a book. Let me record, this was in 2007. The book is number 43, Triloni Park, Kwamagogo. This book now is the basis of a musical that's going to be used to celebrate the ANC centenary next year. So what block hole do I put you in? What are you? What has influenced you? What has made you who you are?
With respect to the book, I am first and foremost umntwana kaMagogo, the child to Magogo. Secondly, I am just a scribe that put together the experiences of people, which then together give you the content of the book. And thirdly, I think I'm merely an economist. I look at everything that I look at it from an economic perspective. And when I say from an economic perspective, is from a sustainability perspective. Right. When you read the book, you will see the extent to which I try to bring in economic rationale within a confusing and probably confused political environment under which we grew under and under which a lot of people operated.
How come you didn't turn out to be a politician?
Because I don't think I can survive in politics.
This book, because it's been classified as probably one of the more important books, and also the story that you write relates to the house where the ANC used to house its cadres during the struggle against apartheid, and is actually seen in some circles as bigger than Lilliesleaf in Rivonia, where Nelson Mandela and the others were arrested.
I do make the point that the house that I focus the story on contributed 10 times more than Lilliesleaf Farm, in the sense that it existed for more than 40 years without ending up in a disastrous situation like what Lilliesleaf ended up in, right? But what I also try and do deliberately in the book is not to spend too much time talking about the politics, right, talking about the military strategies, talking about the diplomacy of the liberation process of South Africa. I spend a lot of time talking about the human element of the struggle, understanding the people who were involved in the struggle, either consciously or unconsciously. And the unconsciously would be those people who found themselves at the crossroads, like the Masilela family, who own the house that I'm talking about.
Absolutely, Elias, we have to leave it there. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to talk about the 5 years objective retirement reform advice for South Africa that you've written, a collection of some of your thinking on retirement reform in South Africa, but perhaps the subject of another conversation another year.
Thank you very much.